Good evening. So happy to be with you here on the 6th day of Channukka. Yeah, it's interesting. This is actually my third Channukka in Reggio Calabria. Last year and the year before, I didn't have any menorahs. So I created some. And all of my friends knew that I was very, very lonely without them. And last year, I had to do the same thing because all my things were still in the container to come to Reggio, and I didn't have any menorahs. And this year, Baruch Hashem, I've got them all. And I've got the most incredible feeling about this. And this feeling comes from something that I read in the Zohar and that I wanted to share with you anyway. And I wanted to share it with you later, but I'm going to do it now because it fits. And it says that Hashem, in this parsha this week, it says that Hashem will uproot a soul many times before it reaches the place where it needs to be in order for it to do what it was meant to do. And sometimes, especially during the Chagim, when, of course, this year everybody is pretty much in their own space and we can't be with others. But normally, Channukka is a moment in time when families get together. This is something that I really want to bring up because the idea of what Channukka is, I think in most of the world, is pretty much distorted. Because Channukka is not about eating sufganiyot. And Channukka is not about presents. And it's not about Hanukkah gelt, and it's not about the material stuff. And most people don't even talk about what Hanukkah is. They light the candles, they eat the sufganiyot, you make a party, you have a great time, family gets together, all good. Except for the fact that it's not. And what Channukka really is, in reality, is a very, very painful time, again in our history, where the Maccabim destroyed and were destroyed, and our people were destroyed, and our Torah was looking to be destroyed. And Jews became so preoccupied with Hellenism, and they so became not Jewish or not Hebrew, that they actually became enemies within the country and within the people, and assimilated to such a degree that it can almost be taken in comparison to what is going on in our world, the Jewish world today, where the external is taking over to such a degree that what really is the essence of this holiday, the essence of what Channukka is not thought about. The essence is bloodshed. The essence is 20 years of a band of little people with giant minds and wills and power and spirituality, wanted and needed to save our people. It's almost like a Tisha B'Av, because we lost so much. And when we came back after all this, okay, what happened? Destroyed place, destroyed temple, destroyed monstrous, all full of all kinds of statues and idols. In that mess, in that hellhole, they found a cursor of 1 day worth of oil to light a menorah that wasn't there anymore. Obviously, the gold menorah was not there. So they constructed a new one out of other metal that they had, certainly not gold, because everything was robbed. Obviously, that's how it all began, with taking the money from the temple. And they used that one cursor of oil that lasted, instead of 1 day, 8 days, for them to be able to make new kosher oil to light the menorah. Where does this come from? We're talking about nisim v'niflaot. Why do we say Baruch Ata Hashem she'asa nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh? The miracles that you did for our fathers in those days, in that time, like the miracles you do for us, for Am Yisrael, every single day of our existence. And we talk about sufganiyot, and we talk about presents, and we talk about, all the external things that really have very, very, very little to do with what really happened here, what really almost broke us again, what almost broke the temple again. Okay, we don't have one. So nothing has changed. We're always in a situation where we need the miracle of Channukka. And we need to think about it, and we need to be with it, And we need to understand it, and we need to light the candles with the understanding that we're lighting and we're giving and we're producing light for the outside world to see. Channukka, the Jewish people, the light of the Jewish people. So, to all my Jewish friends, all Am Yisrael, Chag Sameach, and may the light of the warmth of the flame and the light of Hashem's blessings bless each and every one of us. And with us, since we are the lamplighters of the world, or so we should be, the whole world. Because at this moment in time, that which we need is the light of miracles. We're at the parasha VAYISHEV. Likutei Sichot, volume 30, page 176, says, the truth, however, is that Yaakov's request for peace and tranquility was eventually granted by God. I mean, here we are. Yaakov, what kind of a life did he have from one place to the other? 20 years of Lavan, the idolater, 2 wives, 2 concubines, 12 sons, 1 daughter, in deep, deep, deep pain and trouble after Shem. Not exactly great time. And Yaakov sought peace. God wanted to give him a more sublime peace and tranquility than Yaakov was yet worthy of. That means by the time he got to Canaan, and after all that had happened and all that he had done, he was not yet worthy of what he asked for. Therefore, Hashem sent him the ordeal with Josef, which we will talk about, in order to challenge Yaakov and thereby uplift him spiritually to the level at which he would be deserving of the greater peace. And that is why our entire parsha is called VAYISHEV, settled. For in this parsha we read of the ordeals which God sent to Jacob to elevate him spiritually to the point where he could live totally harmoniously in this world as well as the next. Our life in this world, as we just heard, is a preparation for our life in the world to come. And Maybe I should bring this in right now. Okay. Zohar, Bereshit, section 1, page 180b. Why is man punished by God undeservedly? The answer is, as has been affirmed, that when suffering befalls a righteous man, it is on account of the love which God bears to him. He crushes his body in order to give more power to his soul, so that he may draw him nearer in love. He crushes the body to draw him nearer in love. For it is needful that the body should be weak and the soul should be strong, that so a man may be beloved of God, as the companions have affirmed, that the Holy One inflicts suffering on the righteous in this world in order that they may merit the world to come, precisely, exactly what is written in Torah. But he who is weak of soul and strong of body is hated to God. It is because God has no pleasure in him that he inflicts no pain upon him in this world, but permits his life to flow smoothly along with ease and comfort, in that for any virtuous act he may perform, he receives his reward in this world, so that no portion should be left to him in the next world. This is in accordance with Onkelos' paraphrase of the text, and he repayeth them that hate him to their face. Is that clear? Or is that clear? There are people who have no problems. People who are well, people who are rich, people who have wonderful children, great families. Everything is terrific. No schlepping around the world, no being uprooted. Everything is marvelous, day after day. That's when you got to worry. That's when you got to worry. So here you have Yaakov, his 12 sons, not exactly happy with his son Josef, because Josef is a dreamer. Josef is handsome, very, puts coal in his eyes, takes the payas and makes locks. And then comes up with dreams. I dreamt a dream. Well, when he comes up with the dream of the sheep and them bowing before his, and then the sun and the moon and the stars bowing to him, the brothers went completely bonkers. What are you saying? You want to rule over us? and we should bow to you? And Yaakov gets angry with him, and he says pretty much the same thing, but it's a big difference because Yaakov knows that what he dreamt will come to be. Here comes the conversation of faith. How does he know? How does he know? How does he know? And how does Yitzchak, his father, know that Joseph was not killed? So let's go with the story. So what happens here is the jealous brothers, obviously, decide that they're going to kill him. Yeah, they're going to kill him. Here you're talking about tzaddikim. Okay? You have 10 sons. Benjamin is too little, and Joseph makes 12. But 10 of them decide they are going to kill Joseph. Not only because of the dreams, but because his father loves him so much to give him the coat of the beautiful colors. And they're jealous. And they decide they're going to kill him. They go to Shechem to do their pasturing with the animals. Then they leave Shechem, and in the meantime, Yaakov decides to send Joseph to find out about what's going on and if everything is okay, because Joseph is the one who brings him all the news about what the others were doing anyway. Okay, that they were eating the wrong meat, that they were looking at the wrong, whatever. Okay, but the brothers did not appreciate, obviously, Joseph doing what he's doing. So here we go. They are going to kill him. Reuven says, no, don't kill. Let's put him into a pit where there are scorpions and snakes. And he's thinking, okay, we'll put him into the pit, and then when they go away, I'll take him out of the pit and I'll bring him back to his father. In the meantime, Joseph is on his way, is in a field and gets lost, sees a man, and the man asks him, where are you going? What are you looking for? Oh, I'm looking for my brothers. Oh, they're not here anymore. They're not in Shechem anymore. They're in Dotan. Go there. And who is this man? This is the angel Gabriel. So, why does Hashem put a guy there into the middle of the field to tell Yosef, don't bother going there? They're not there, they're someplace else. What we see from this is what we see in every single movement in our lives, that ultimately it's Hashem who moves the dice. There is this big, huge, gigantic chessboard, and Hashem moves around our lives precisely and exactly the way the Zohar writes and says, you need to leave here. you need to be uprooted and you need to go someplace else, because the mission of your neshama, of your soul, is another. It all starts with dreams. At the end, it'll all finish with dreams. But dreams are a very, very interesting subject. And there is much conversation about the subject of dreams. The Rebbe says, why did Yaakov wait expectantly for Josef's dream to materialize? All the other brothers chose to be shepherds, because in order to devote themselves properly to God, they needed to isolate themselves from the distractions of everyday life. Josef was thus superior in the sense that he was able to be immersed in worldliness and yet remain perfect in the service of God. Therefore, Yaakov waited impatiently for Joseph's dream that the brothers would become submissive to Joseph. Here they're trying to kill him, and Yaakov is waiting for the dream to come true. To be fulfilled, for then they would also benefit from some of Joseph's greatness. In fact, it is only through obtaining some of Joseph's spiritual greatness that the other tribes would be able to withstand the difficulties of exile. Or Yaakov was waiting impatiently for Mashiach ben Yosef, the precursor of Mashiach ben David. Joseph arrives, his brothers take him and take, of course, Reuben's advice, and they decide to put him into the pit. Now, the story with the pit is interesting. Why? Because if Joseph is righteous, so thinks Reuben, he has a chance that Hashem will protect him against the snakes and against the scorpions and against anything else that's there. Of course, because that's exactly the way it is. And he went to go and take care of his father because it was his day. And when he came back to pick up Joseph out of the pit, no Joseph. And he ripped his clothes and he began to cry. And what is he going to say? What is he going to tell his father? But nobody, the other 9, did not divulge the fact that they sold Joseph to a bunch of Ishmaelites, a caravan that was coming along. Why should we bother? Yehuda says, why should we bother to kill him? What's the point of spilling blood? Let's make money. We'll sell him. It's so perfect. It's so perfect. That way, we don't spill blood. He's no longer in our hair. The Ishmaelites are going to take him, who cares where? And we don't have to worry about it. We didn't kill him. We didn't spill blood. Let's take the coat. We'll have it soaked in the blood of a he-goat. We'll bring it to his father. We'll tell him he was ripped apart by an animal. And with that, the story's over. Of course, they have no clue that with that, they are destroying their father. Their father goes into mourning for 22 years. And he says, I will step into the grave for my child. And there is nothing that they can do and nothing that they can say. They have no clue where Josef is. They also can't tell what they did. They swore, and they made God a partner in that vow that they will never, never tell what they did. So Reuben did not know that Joseph was sold. The 9 others knew, and no one ever said a single solitary word, because they swore that they would excommunicate whoever. Obviously, we know what that means. What happens is, and this is how you realize, okay, when you really look at what happens, how Hashem designs every moment of every single life. And sometimes we don't understand how and why things happen. And why one person says this and the other person says that, and why I get an email like that, and why a comment is made like that, and who and what. There is sometimes, most of the time, there is no explanation logical to us that we can come up with, brilliant as we all are, that says why and how. But everything is just perfect. And even if we look at things and they look absolutely outrageous, Miriam, what are you doing in Reggio Calabria? Hashem wants me to be here. And obviously, that's exactly what he wants. Because if he didn't, I would be someplace else. I've been in enough places. Why am I here? When it's time for all of it to be revealed, I know much of it I already understand, but I think the big things are very much yet to be revealed. We get into a very interesting subject. All of a sudden, out of absolutely nowhere, we're talking about Josef, we're talking about his being sold, we're talking about his arriving in Egypt and cut off. And in the middle of all of this, Torah begins and it says, it was at the time that Yehuda's level of respect from his brothers went down, since they blamed him for not averting the entire incident with Joseph. So he turned away from his brothers and went into partnership with an Adulamite man named Hira. There, Yehuda saw the daughter of a businessman named Shua, and he married her, and with her he had 3 sons. The son was Ahora, and Hashem didn't want him to live, so he put him away. He had a second son by the name of Onan, and also he spilled seed, and Hashem took him away, and she bore another son by the name of Shilah, and he was supposed to be the husband, the third husband, of what became, of course, his daughter-in-law, Tamar. Now, Tamar was married to and she became a widow because was bad, very bad, and Hashem took him away. So then she's told by Yehuda, I'm giving you my son Onan in Levirate marriage, and he will create with you his brother's family. But Onan had other ideas. He didn't want any kind of family made by him for the memory of his brother. And so he spilled seed, and so Hashem killed him. So then we have Shilah, and Yehuda is absolutely terrified that something will happen to Shilah as well. And so he tells Tamar, listen, you go back to your father, put on your widow's outfit, and you wait for my son Shilah to grow up to be able to be your husband, but he doesn't want that. At any rate, many days passed, and she sees that Shilah is growing up, but she's not getting him. So Shua, Yehuda's wife, dies. And after Yehuda was consoled, he went up to Timnah to do some work with his sheep shearers. And somebody reported to Tamar saying, look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. Now, why is this so important? Why did somebody bother to tell her? Obviously, there had to be a reason why. She took off her widow's clothes, covered her head with a scarf, and covered her face. She sat down at the crossroads on the way to Timnah in order to offer herself to Yehuda. So She knew where to sit. She also had a plan, because she saw that Shiloh was grown up and she had not been given to him as a wife, and she desired to have children from Yehuda. Good enough reason to go to Timnah? I love this. It's stupendous. When Yehuda saw her, he thought she was a harlot, of course, because she was sitting at the crossroads and he did not recognize her because she had covered her face. He had turned off the road on which he was traveling, and he said, "Get ready and let me come to you." And she said, "And what will you give me?" And he says, "I'll give you a sheep. I'll send it to you." And she said, "Nah, I don't want a goat. I want something else. I want your coat. I want your signet ring. And I want your staff as collateral. Then when you send me the goat, I'll give it back to you." Story, of course, is stupendous because she gets pregnant. Of course, Yehuda sends the goat to where? People tell her there is no prostitute here. He didn't find her. So the goat went right back. And 3 months later, Yehuda is informed that his daughter-in-law, Tamar, prostituted herself and is pregnant from prostitution. At which point, the righteous Yehuda says, "Bring her out and have her burnt." She was taken out to be burnt. She sent a message to her father-in-law saying, "I am pregnant from the man to whom these belong." She said, "Please identify whose signet ring, cloak, and staff are these?" Yehuda recognized them, of course, and he said, "She's right in what she says. She became pregnant from me justifiably because I did not give her my son Shiloh." But he didn't continue to be intimate with her anymore. Alternatively, he did continue. From this incredible story, we have the birth of Peretz and Zerach. There is the story of the hand of one baby stretched out, and the midwife put a crimson thread on his hand saying, "This one came out first," but then the other one came out, and she said, "With such strength you have forced yourself, Paratz." So he, Yehuda, named him Peretz. Afterwards, his brother emerged, the one who had the crimson thread on his hand, and he named him Tzarach, because of the shining appearance of the crimson And we know that here are the forerunners of kings and Mashiach. Peretz was the firstborn, alluding to the fact that the Baal Teshuvah is higher than the tzaddik, the righteous. However, Sarach's hand emerged first, indicating that initially a person should endeavor to be righteous. But since Achan was destined to come from Zarach, Zarach too needed to recognize the advantage of Teshuvah. And so it was Peretz who emerged first. Basically, Mashiach arises from Peretz, since Mashiach is associated with Teshuvah, to the extent that he will influence tzaddikim to teshuvah. That means the righteous also have to do teshuvah. Teshuvah is for everyone. This is cited in Likutei Torah, Shmini Atzeret 92b. This is also hinted in the name Peretz, which indicates the breaking of boundaries, a task which is crucial in the process of teshuvah. It's important, very important, to talk about what the Zohar speaks in this parsha. Hence, while the holy soul is still in a man's body, it is incumbent on him to multiply the image of the king in the world. There is herein an esoteric thought involved, namely, that just as the celestial stream flows on forever without ceasing, so must man see that his own river and spring shall not cease in this world. And so long as a man is unsuccessful in his purpose in this world, the Holy One, blessed be He, uproots him and replants him over and over again. Here's what we started with. Observe then the meaning of the words, I have roused up one from the earth, and he is come. From the rising of the sun to the downing of the moon, heavenly forces which cause arousing in the souls above, corresponding to the stirring in man in his body. For it is for this purpose that God creates souls in couples and sends them down to the world, so that there may be companionship both high and below, and the wellspring of all be blessed. God made man that he should steadfastly walk in his ways and never cut off his fount and wellspring. For if a man cuts off his wellspring on earth and causes it to dry up, it is as though he causes the waters of the celestial river to fail, as described in the words, "The waters fail from the sea, and the river is drained dry." So, if a man spills seed, he dries the river, which dries the sea, and therefore we lose our souls. And spilling seed is murder. And we know what murder will create for the soul and where she will go and where she will never, ever come out of. We're back to Josef. Trip to Egypt, gets sold again, and winds up in the home of Potifar. He's gorgeous. Potifar wants him. The wife of Potifar wants him. And the officer, chief officer, Potifar, loves him because everything he touches turns to good. He gives him everything. It almost sounds like Yaakov and Lavan. Lavan became wealthy and rich because of Yaakov, and Potifar becomes rich and famous and wealthy and all the good stuff. Why? Because Josef is taking over and Hashem is with Josef, so what can go wrong? However, Mrs. Potifar has her eye on that gorgeous, adorable Jewish boy who really takes very good care of himself. And because he takes such good care of himself, and he's so vain about his looks, that Hashem sends the bear after him. So one day, it's interesting how Torah explains this. So he left everything he had in Joseph's hands, Potifar, and he didn't care to know about anything of his except the crumpets that he ate. Didn't care. Since Joseph was in control, he pampered himself. So Joseph had handsome features and a beautiful complexion. God said, "You are pampering yourself while your father mourns, and I will send the bear against you." Then after these words of God, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and she said, "Sleep with me." But he refused. He said to his master's wife, "Look, my master doesn't care to know about any of my affairs in the house. And he has given me everything of his into my hands. In this house, there's no one greater than me, and he has not withheld anything from me except you, since you're his wife. So how could I do this extremely wicked act and sin against God? Not against his master, but against God. A certain religious holiday arrived. Nobody was in the house. Joseph came back to the house to do his business. And guess what? Madame goes after him and she assaults him. He basically rips himself away. She's left with his jacket, runs around saying, look, here is his jacket. He tried to rape me, and she talks to her husband. Her husband, of course, has him thrown into jail. And in jail, Hashem is with him. The bear, of course. But Hashem is with him. And everything that he does there, again, finds great favor in the prisoner's top guy's eyes. And he gives him everything. He gives him the keys. He gives him the prisoners. Take care of everything. You're so great at things. You know, I got other things to do. You take care of things. No problem. Wow, how superb to have you here. Time goes by. The natural reaction for Joseph after being wrongly imprisoned would be utter contempt for Egypt and its government. Thus, when Joseph was joined by the chief butler and the chief baker, two of Pharaoh's high-ranking ministers, it would only have been natural for Joseph to shun and hate them. Joseph, however, did exactly the opposite. Not only did he bear no grudge against Pharaoh's ministers, who were key members of the corrupt regime and had wrongfully imprisoned him, but he took an active interest in their welfare. So that shows you that being nasty, even to people that you don't like, is not the way. In fact, he was even sensitive enough to notice that they had been troubled by their dreams, and he inquired, "Why do your faces look so down today?" In hindsight, we see that from a single act of kindness, Joseph was eventually saved, leading him to save the entire Egyptian people from starvation. This teaches us how important it is to be caring about other people and never to underestimate the power of one single good deed. Joseph's sensitivity to others' distress a person whom he never ever met before and had every right to despise, led to the salvation of Egypt. Because later on, what he does is, in fact, the salvation of Egypt. So here we are, and there are the chief baker and the chief, what is he called? Butler. He brings the wine to the Pharaoh. And so here we go, because, he comes in and he sees that they're down. What's going on, guys? I had a dream, and no one is here to interpret it. So Joseph says to them, don't dream interpretations come from God? Please tell me your dreams. In my dream, says the chief butler, look, a vine was before me. On the vine, there were 3 tendrils. It seemed to be blossoming, and its buds came out, and then clusters of grapes ripened. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave them to Pharaoh in his palm. Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will count his officers to serve him at a meal. He will count your head and restore you to your position. And then you will place the wine cup in Pharaoh's hands, just like when you were his butler in the first instance. And here we come to a moment enormously important, and it cost Joseph an extra 2 years in prison because he did this. Exact. If you would then remember me, he says to the butler, when things go well for you, please do me a favor and mention me to the Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was kidnapped from my land of the Hebrews, and I haven't done anything wrong here either for them to have put me in prison. What did he do? He counted on man to do the job that only Hashem can do. He asked for someone whose dream he interpreted to put in a good word for him, to remember him. How many times in our lives do we ask other people for help? How many times are we in trouble and hoping that somebody will help us and ask, would you do this for me? Would you do that for me? Could you help me here? What's the story here? He asked, remember me, because he was quite sure that his interpretation, which came from God, of course, was correct. The chief baker saw that he interpreted well. So he said to Joseph, in my dream, I too was there, and look, there were 3 wicker baskets on my head. In the upper basket, there was a selection of all of Pharaoh's food made by a baker, and the birds were eating from the basket on the top of my head. Joseph replied, this is the interpretation. In 3 days, the three baskets are the 3 days. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will remove your head from you and hang you on the gallows, and the birds will eat your flesh off. And so it happened on the 3rd day. It was Pharaoh's birthday. Pharaoh made a banquet for all his servants, and he counted the chief butler and the chief baker among his servants. He restored the butler to his position as butler, and the butler placed the cup in the palm of Pharaoh. Just like Joseph had predicted, and he hanged the chief baker. But that day, the chief butler did not remember Joseph, and he forgot him later on too. And this is how the parsha ends. Dreams are not to be talked about with anyone unless they're very close to you and unless you know that they're going to interpret for good. Because if a dream is interpreted for bad, it will come that way. The Zohar is very, very clear on this conversation. You know, there are many, many things that I would like to offer you, but it's very difficult to put them into the context of being able to understand the language if you don't have all of the background information. Because the Zohar takes concepts and takes the things that are being told to us in the Parsha through the Torah and looks into them in a way that opens up the doors to a very different, very deep, and very celestial kind of thinking. You know, it's very difficult to be nice to people who are mean, to people that you may not even know. But there is something that must make you realize inside that you get more with honey than you get with vinegar. And Josef, even in jail, even in the most horrible prison in all of Egypt, he never lost this kindness that he had, this love for his fellow man, because it's in his DNA. It's the way he was born. It's not something that he could change, but it cost him 2 years of having to remain in prison because he didn't come only to Hashem and say to Hashem, please take me out of there. Why did he need the chief butler to put in a good word for him when Hashem is with him in all things that he does and shows him each and every moment of his life? You're not alone. I'm right there. You're successful and you have everything, even though you behave yourself not so hot sometimes. You go and you worry about your beauty. There is the bear. I'm going to give you something that's going to make you look at things in a different way. Sometimes very difficult for us to understand that even the not so wonderful things, and even the things that we may think are wrong, work out to be right. And maybe the judgment that we have on most everything is wrong, and something else is right. And maybe we should listen better. And maybe we should understand that prayer to Hashem and gratitude to Hashem and going to Hashem and telling him of what we need and asking for his help and asking for his advice and asking for his guidance, obviously, for us is much, much more important than going to a psychiatrist. Maybe the free psychiatrist is the refuah shlema. Maybe the free doctor is the doctor. And then you go, and then you ask, and then he guides you, and then Bezrat Hashem, that will be the right medicine. So, we all need some of the right medicine. In the way things are today, we talk about medicine, we talk about vaccines, we talk about things that a year ago we didn't even know existed. And we need Hashem to guide us. And we need him to be close to us and bring us light into our lives, into our hearts, into our souls, and beneficence, and good deeds, and sensibility, and sensitivity, and love, and caring for the other. So Hashem bless you. Send you all the light of Channukka every day of the year. And we should light together in the Beis Hamikdash. Bimhera b'yameinu, immediately in our days. אמן ואמן. חג שמח.